So I'd like to say some more words about meditation, just to start our day. And I'd like to talk about the Buddha's teachings specifically on meditation. And just for your information, any of you who don't know, there are some key suttas that really relate to meditation practice. And the Satipatthana Sutta, which is Majjhima Nikaya number 10. The Kaya-Gatasati Sutta, which I talked about day before yesterday, I think. The Body Awareness Sutta, which is, I think, number 119 in Majjhima. And then next door to that, I think 180 is Anapanasati Sutta, the sutta on contemplation of the breath. And so these three are really worth looking at. I'm sure many of you have studied them. There's so much in these suttas to guide us in our meditation practice. And some aspects really stand out for me. In the Satipatthana Sutta, there's a constant refrain, isn't there, that comes in every section of the sutta, at the end of every section. So the four main sections, okay, how to contemplate the body, how to contemplate the breath, how to observe feelings in the body, and then how to observe the mind, and how to observe the dhammas, mental contents, thoughts. Somebody asked the question, what does it mean, this word Dhamma? One of our friends at Dhammadharani there asked us, how do you interpret this word? When the Buddha's talking about Dhammanupassana, contemplation of Dhamma, in this sutta, Satipatthana Sutta, and I looked it up. I looked up different translations, and just to share with you that Bhante Sujato translates this word, the word Dhamma in this context, as phenomena, contemplation of phenomena, mental phenomena. And Bhante Sudaso translates it as principles, which is really interesting. And as I said the other day, the Buddha gave us all different ways to contemplate the Dhammas, these principles, these phenomena. So in a way, yes, there are many principles that we can learn through study of Satipatthana Sutta to see how we can observe the mind, observe the thinking mind skillfully, in order to help us to free the heart from suffering. So anyway, that's a little aside, but to come back to the refrain, which comes at the end of every one of the four Satipatthana teachings. And actually it comes in the groups, the four groups, time and time again. So these are instructions for how to practice, whether we're observing the body, the mind, emotions, feelings, these resorts for mindfulness, whichever we're investigating, whichever we're experiencing. And usually it's a whole gamut, isn't it? Things coming and going. Whatever we're experiencing, consider this. The Buddha said we should have these qualities. Atape sampajano satima. This comes again and again. Atape sampajano satima. Atape means ardent. It has a quality of burning, tapas. It's a word that comes in the Hindu, in Sanskrit and Hindu languages also, for someone who's a practitioner, somebody who's ardently practicing tapas. So atape is an encouragement for us to really put energy in to our practice, a sort of sense of urgency, a sense of enthusiasm. You know, bring in this really strong, channeled energy. Atape. Sampajano means with clear knowing. It's sometimes translated as clear comprehension. Clear comprehension, clear seeing. So clarity, developing clarity. And satima, of course, is mindfulness. So putting these three together, how to stay mindful in every moment, bring in energy every moment, and clear seeing, clear comprehension. And he goes on, Vinaya loke abhijja domanasa. Vinaya, letting go, relinquishing, removing is what this word means. Loke is the world, for the world, in the world. And abhijja domanasa, abhijja is covetousness, that quality of holding to, wanting to acquire. And domanasa is unpleasant mental feeling, often translated as grief. So we want to be practicing when we have our daily session at home, on a retreat, and actually perhaps we could say in a continuous fashion, cultivating this removing, letting go of covetousness and grief for the world. So it's like we're in the world, but we're not of the world. This attitude of letting go. And, you know, most of us, I'm sure, are not that covetous. You know, we're not enamored of consumer items, and we're not seeking more and more things, material things. I'm sure that's the case for most of us. But we can investigate and just see what does come up for us in our practice that we are holding on to. And it can be the most wonderful things. Good people, can be caught up in good work, wholesome work, really the best of things, wanting to support the people around us, wanting to do good, wanting to contribute. And we can feel a lot of grief for the world that feels quite natural, when we take in, when we hear about unfortunate things happening all around us in the world, difficult things. So it's like these qualities are not wrong, but if we notice they come up for us in our practice, we can also notice that the reason they come up for us is because there's a certain amount of kind of tethering there. There's a certain amount of investment, and we can skillfully let go of that. We can skillfully let go of even the good. The things we cover are usually very good things, and the qualities we're developing in the world are usually very good qualities as practitioners, as people who are practicing the Buddha's teachings, people who are keeping the precepts. But even so, even the very best, the most noble aspirations, if they come up for us in our practice, we can consider there'll be perhaps some degree of holding on to, some degree of attachment to. And it's this piece that we can just be aware of, just notice, and let go of any attachment to anything whatsoever. Fortunately, it's that simple. I mean, that's good, isn't it? It is simple. We don't have to be confused by feeling that, well, of course I want to let go of all the negative, horrible stuff that's going on in here. I want to let go of all the anger and hatred and remorse and so forth. But actually, what happens when we practice, isn't it, is that we refine, and we become really very wholesome in our lives. And so we're left with oftentimes, a lot of very good aspirations and good qualities. But we also need to let go of those. I don't mean we stop doing good things, but what I'm really saying is that right action, right livelihood really come from a place of letting go. There's nobody here doing this good thing. We want to allow good to manifest through our thoughts, actions, speech, but not to attach to anything, not to attach to the good, not to attach to results, not to go into the future. So we can have really good projects, really wonderful ways in which we're contributing and helping and making a difference in the world. But there's the danger of getting caught up in these things. It's just as much of a hook as all the difficult, painful emotions, which are kind of easier to let go of, because we don't want to hold on to pain, except that actually this is what we're doing all the time. Because when we're holding on to the good, we also suffer. It's also painful. So these are things to consider. What does it mean to let go, to remove all covetousness and grief for the world? And we can, this isn't just an idea, this is something to experience in our practice. Because as we continue to develop on the path, we often can notice that things will still obsess the mind. It's different kinds of things. The obsessions become more and more wholesome, refined, more and more tenacious, more and more sticky, more and more compelling for us to hold to. So we can develop this atape, this burning, ardent energy to cut through it all. Just keep letting go, keep relinquishing. And we get to notice the taste of freedom in that. We get to really feel that this is the way forward, because it's so beautiful to keep renouncing the sense of self, the sense of mission, the sense of purpose. Keep letting go. And, it's like then we get out of the way. We get out of the way. And that's when good things can start to really happen. I'm sure you know what I mean. So to keep a very conscious sense of vinaya, removing, relinquishing, letting go. The refrain goes on. There's an encouragement to practice in 3 different ways that the Buddha repeated again and again, or that comes again and again in this sutta. So whatever our experience is, consider this. We can notice in one way, see what's our concept of within and outside. Ajata Bahida. The Buddha said again and again, notice internal, external, and also both internal and external experience. So this is very interesting. We can interpret it in all different ways, but generally the understanding is that this means what's happening in here. This is our time on retreat. This is our time to really notice what's going on in here, to pay most attention to this. But we can also be aware, of course, that there's all this going on around us. There's all these other people, good people. There's all the experience of the world. There's me and there's the world. That's our sense of things until it is seen through. So what we experience here and what we see and perceive and can learn from around us. And I find this a helpful reflection because we can learn so much, can't we, from each other also. So just to recognize what is experienced here is generally also experienced out there by other beings. We're kind of not exactly the same, but we have the same human mind, human heart. And so, for instance, as an example, when I sit and meditate, well, there's this sort of flow of dhammas, and it really is a process. And there's absolutely no control of that. And it's just a very impersonal experience of things arising and passing away. Would that ring true for you all? Something along those lines? What I'm pointing to is the sense of kind of deconstruction that happens very quickly for us when we start to meditate. We start to realize, oh gee, there is this breath, there are these body sensations. There's so much going on. There's not a very clear or discrete sense of self anymore. This doesn't have a name, this experience. When I think about where I was born and when I was born, that's completely irrelevant. There's just this. And so, when we look at other people and consider other people, we can recognize it's the same for them too. There's nothing very solid out there. There's nobody fixed, I think I know this one and that one. I think I've got them down, got the personality, I can predict what they're going to do. If I do this, they'll do that. Shall I go that way or not? But no. We don't know anybody else. We really don't. We don't know ourselves. How can we? Because it's just a constantly changing process of dhammas arising and passing away. So, this can really free us up. So, considering the reality of our experience, let's not forget to notice that, well, of course, if this is true for this one, it's also true for all the others, and see people with very open heart, a very fresh gaze. We never know. We don't know anybody, and we can't tell how it's going for them. And so let's remember that whenever we meet each other, we're meeting each other for the first time. However long we've been connected, whatever the history, whatever the past history, every time we see somebody, it's a whole new experience for both people. And in this way, we can really let go of a lot of suffering, a lot of grudges, a lot of ideas that are completely outdated and irrelevant. So this is a very helpful instruction from the Buddha for us to consider. And he goes on to say in this constant refrain, another way of considering reality is to notice samudaya vaya, the arising, samudaya, and the passing away, vaya, the ending. And, we can really apply this teaching to our practice in every moment, if we find that helpful. It's really anicca sanya, it's really the perception of change, isn't it? But we can see in every moment, actually, there is arising and passing. Nothing lasts. And even, for instance, when I've got a really bad pain in my knee, any kind of pain in the body, any kind of experience that feels really fixed and solid and lasting, we can remember this instruction and see how we can relate it to this experience of pain, of constancy, of deep-rooted issues that we may be sensing that we have. Arising and passing every moment. So to, for instance, pain in the knee, to really investigate that, to kind of divide it up, dissect it, go around the edges of it if it's very severe. Don't necessarily have to dive right into the middle, but we can go around the edges of things. Physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain. We can approach from all different directions, and we can just see how it is, how it's changing. We can divert the attention to something else, and again, big change happens for us. This is our world. We have the ability to really bring in this understanding of reality, and particularly apply it when we feel stuck, you know, something solidified for us. You feel there's no light at the end of this tunnel. This is just going on and on. This is how I am. I've always been like this. I'm always going to be like this. These kind of situations, these kind of feelings, they're quite delusory. Completely, you know, because even when we're, you know, a lifelong depressed person, for instance, or I've always been angry. I've been angry since I was born. I was born screaming, you know, with anger. It was anger. And I've been angry ever since, you know, and some people really feel like that. They really feel, you know, everything, I was going to use a word I shouldn't use. Everything is not okay. So, you know, if we have these very persistent mental states, we feel this definitely defines me. You know, this is what I am. No, remember, Samadaya Waya, arising and passing constantly, every moment, there's change. And so within a depression, within a frustrated, angry mind, there's constant change going on, and we can find it. We can see how there's a fluctuation there. And we can remember that, you know, every moment of investigation of the situation is a moment of great change and transformation. And we don't necessarily see it. It's like the mountain, you know, you take one little pebble at a time. It's going to take a while for the mountain to disappear. But nevertheless, you know, this is really wonderful work. It's wonderful work, and it's really significant and meaningful. And just to remember that. So seeing the change is a really helpful instruction from the Buddha to bring it in and remember this, particularly at times when we feel very stuck and very solidified and very identified with our experience. And the last thing the Buddha says in this refrain is anisito. Anisito. It means independent. He says independent, not clinging to anything in this world. So, you know, anisito actually means power, influence, this word in Pali. Anisito means without power and without influence. I would say my interpretation of this is that we have all the power and influence in our practice. We have total power and influence. We are very empowered in our meditation practice. We're really learning mastery of the mind, and it, you know, it surely develops for us. But this instruction to be independent refers to being in the world. So to not hold on to not identify with any kinds of worldly power or influence. And it doesn't mean to give up our high-flying jobs necessarily, or to stop trying to make a difference, stop trying to work for good causes and so forth. It doesn't mean that. Again, it's coming to the root of the matter, which is our attachment to these things. So not to be duped by power, wealth, status, influence, not to be caught up. The Buddha in many different suttas talks about the dangers of these things, even for monks and nuns. He says, if you think if people give you a lot of alms food and requisites and they bow to you and they give you a lot of respect. So be careful. This is really dangerous. Don't allow yourself to get attached to this. So we have a tendency to attach to these things because they're really delightful to us in some respects. They boost our egos. So, the problem is, of course, just that. That's not doing anybody a favor to have a lot of status, power, influence, to be in a high position in the society. We have to be super careful to let go of all of that, let go of our attachment to these things, be humble, be simple, recognize they're meaningless. These things are meaningless. Just use what you can for the good and the rest, put aside. So this is a really wonderful instruction for us, guidance for us, to be independent, to let go of power and influence, not clinging to anything in this world. And that for me encapsulates the entire Buddhist teaching, doesn't it? It's just beautiful. That's all we have to do. Not clinging to anything in this world. Anything. And it's really just helpful to remember that. And, to notice when there's the upadana, this quality of holding on and clinging to anything at all, just to notice. As soon as we notice that there's clinging, we notice that we're suffering. And we notice that there's a sense of self. The three go together. It's like there's the constellation right there. That's the nugget of suffering that we want to keep dismantling. There'll be suffering, there'll inevitably be a sense of self, and there'll be holding on. So whichever way we approach it, am I suffering? Is there a sense of self? Am I holding on to anything? We're getting to the core of the matter, the problem, the disease, the tumor. The Buddha described in so many brilliant ways, the dart, the arrow, we've come to the cause of all our suffering. So we can again and again notice this. And for me, it's almost like there's a felt sense of where there's holding, clinging, dukkha, self, all coming in together. It's like a feeling of a knot. There's something like obstructing, something blocked in the body, in the mind. So as soon as we notice that, we pay attention to that. And paying attention to that, we can really watch the knots disentangle, can't we? We can watch them dissolve, the obstruction dissolve. And that's all we have to do, is just observe. And things quite naturally disentangle themselves. That's the beauty of this practice. We're not having to go out there. We want to apply a lot of energy, but then it's an energy of a very restrained way of being with experience, not coming in and interfering with it, not trying to control it, bringing all our energy to bear on to nourish the observing part of the mind, just to be with, because then we can observe things changing. Samadaya Ayya, we can observe the inevitable kind of dissolution of all dhammas. How wonderful. So what we're really doing is, there's a flow of nature out there. There's some blockages in here. That's all. And these blockages and obstructions need to free flow. We need to just let them start flowing. And that's what we're doing. And one can feel it in the body, feel it in the mind. So look out for the knots. And one translation of this beautiful word nibbana is no knots. No knots. There are many different ways of interpreting this word, which is wonderful. But one of them is this. And so let's see how we go today, really bringing up that tapas, the ardent energy. Time is short. Life is short. We don't know. We might keel over any time. It can happen any time. So let's make the most of our day and bring in this energy. And, you know, remembering how to channel the energy into simply being present, observing, alert, very alert, not to miss a thing, and investigate. And we can enjoy the letting go, allow the letting go to be present for us in every moment, removing covetousness and grief for the world, independent, not clinging to anything in this world. So I really wish you well with this, and have a good day of practice, and we'll have our usual session of questions and answers at 4 o'clock to conclude the day. Everyone.